following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or another print disability that makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org. Your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for today, Friday, June 26th of 2026. Your readers today are
Don Williams
and J.J. Patek, and we'll open as we do with the weather, which it looks pretty strange out there. It's sunshiny, and yet it's pretty foggy and gray and everything over the lake and the river and downtown, so it's kind of odd. But we're going to have times of clouds and sun today with a high of 73, with some clouds tonight and a low of 59. Partly sunny tomorrow with a brief shower or two with a high of 78 and a low of 59. Sunday, it'll be mostly sunny with a high of 82 and a low of 62, so here comes all that heat again. Monday, we'll have sunshine and a few clouds with a high of 84 and a low of 67. Then Tuesday, we'll have a thunderstorm possible with a high of 85 and a low of 60, so there comes the humidity. And then Wednesday, a thunderstorm possible and hot with a high of, are you ready, 90 with a low of 71. And Thursday, it'll be sunny and very warm with a high of 89 and a low of 72, so I guess summer is here. And yesterday's high was 64 and the low was 60. The normal high was 78 and the normal low is 61. The record high back in 1988 was 96. The record low is 43 in 1979. And then last year's high was 85 and the low was 70 degrees. For the national extremes, the high was in Blythe, California with 107 degrees. I don't think I'm ready for that. And then the low was in Hettinger, North Dakota at 35 degrees. The air quality index is good, heading toward moderate, but still good. And the sun rose this morning at 5:38, and it will set tonight at 8:58 p.m. And then the moon will rise at 6:36 p.m. and it's going to set, or it did set, something or like that at 2:43 a.m. when we're all in bed. And for weather trivia, how much heat is generated by lightning? And it says up to 50,000 degrees Fahrenheit, which is actually hotter than the surface of the sun.
Wow.
In a very tiny little space. I learned that in meteorology.
Uh-huh.
So on to you, Don.
Well, yeah, I'm looking at the year-to-date precipitation, as I often do, and it's like 8 inches more than normal so far this year. That's
You never know it the way I've been
I've
cutting
never
the
seen
grass.
a number like that.
You go out every day or every week and you got to cut back 40. You know, it's
Yeah, exactly.
mower. You need to have a harvester.
Well, the spotlight is on Buffalo again as
Yay.
it hosts the NHL Draft. Downtown Buffalo is expected to be buzzing again this weekend. Buffalo Sabres are hosting the NHL Draft, which is another chance for the team to showcase KeyBank Center and the surrounding areas of the city and region. The two-day event starts today, expected to bring about 10,000 people to the arena.
Wow.
That includes hundreds of prospects and their family and friends, media members and agents, and fans from across the border in Canada, filling thousands of local hotel rooms. The 7-round draft, which begins with the first round today, is expected to create almost $4 million in economic impact for the region and shine an international light on the momentum of the Sabres and downtown Buffalo. It bodes well for the future of the region and its hockey team, and is a sign that the NHL wants to bring big events with huge productions to Western New York. Creating foot traffic around the arena has been a pretty regular thing since the start of this year. The Sabres sold out 25 straight home games to close their season, including 2 rounds of the playoffs, and KeyBank Center has consistently hosted other significant events, the biggest being the NCAA men's basketball tournament in March. The team expects this year to easily surpass the 1.3 million people who came through the arena during 2025. Approximately 900,000 people have already come through the building through May. To have literally the world looking at what's going on in Buffalo is an incredible opportunity, said Pete Goelli, the president of business operations for the Buffalo Sabres and Bills. The Sabres have hosted the draft 3 times before, including in 2016, but those events were not a fraction of what the draft is like now, even though it was decentralized last year, meaning team representatives do not gather in one place for the event. This will be the first time the NHL is bringing the new version of the draft into a team's home arena. The NHL, with its national and international partners, will deliver the draft broadcast to fans in nearly 200 countries and territories. Production is mostly managed by the NHL, so the Sabres have not needed to deploy many extra resources for the draft, but still get the attention it will bring to the market, Goelli said. The largest production at the arena before this was a 2-night Drake concert in 2024. The draft will wind up being double the scope of that event, Goelli said. It's next level between social media and TV impressions. It's going to garner attention for Buffalo that I don't know how many other events can, Goelli said. It's also a chance for the Sabres to tell their story and the story of the region. That includes the team bringing to the production some surprises that will help make the event more uniquely Buffalo. Alumni from both the Sabres and Bills are expected to be featured. When you're in the market for all these unique opportunities and events, it just creates another platform that we can potentially leverage, Goelli said. It's such a great hockey town and sports town in general, so that's an important part of what the league wants to showcase. Canalside, where the Sabres just recently hosted watch parties for home playoff games, will also be on display. There will be a fan fest from 4 to 7 p.m. today and from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. tomorrow outside the Arena Alumni Plaza that's expected to spill over into Canalside. More than 24 Visit Buffalo's team members and street team volunteers will be on Perry Street from 4 to 7 p.m. today to help coordinate giveaways and activities. The team will be wearing limited edition Visit Buffalo fan jerseys and holding branded Ask Me signs to help share information on where to eat and what to do in Buffalo. Buffalo is a hockey town, and being fresh off the Sabres making the Stanley Cup playoffs, we're excited to keep that momentum moving forward, said Patrick Kaler, president and CEO of Visit Buffalo, which helped bring the draft to Buffalo. The Buffalo Sports Commission, a subsidiary of Visit Buffalo, estimates nearly $4 million in economic impact for the region, with nearly 2,500 hotel room nights sold for the region. The Sabres are anticipating approximately 225 media members between general media, clubs, and league rights holders who will be covering the event. There will be 110 prospects there, and each will have a minimum of 6 seats, so the reach is at least 700 more people, but that may go as high as 1,250 family members. The team added at least 100 certified agents who have another 100 associates that are expected to be in attendance. It also helps that the Sabres now have the number 4 pick in the draft, which was acquired earlier in the week in a trade with the Chicago Blackhawks. After some wheeling and dealing, Buffalo has gone from having only 1 pick in the top 2 rounds, and that was a late first-round pick, to having 3, including that top 4 pick. That doesn't mean all those picks will be executed, Goelli said. It's possible the Sabres trade one or more of them to acquire a more experienced player, especially since trading away veteran Alex Tuch. Additionally, Buffalo's neighbor to the north, the Toronto Maple Leafs, have the top pick in the draft. Tickets that were made available for fans to attend the draft are sold out, and some of those attending will likely include Maple Leafs backers who want to be there to see the number 1 overall pick. When we were having preliminary conversations about how this was going to be produced, we didn't think we'd be drafting until the end of the first round, and we didn't have a second-round pick at that time, Goelli said. Now to have 3 picks in the top 45 really lines up even more perfectly. The dialogue has changed considerably when you're hosting and have a prominent number of picks at the top of the draft, he said. The timing of the draft couldn't have lined up much better for bringing future events to the region. The draft caps a big week for sports in Western New York. It comes just a few days after the ribbon cutting for the new $2.2 billion stadium for the Bills, also owned by Terry Pegula. Having the stadium ready to go is also a bonus for the Sabres, who want to bring a Stadium Series game there as soon as 2028. NHL officials will tour the new Highmark Stadium while they're in town this weekend. The 2027-28 season will mark the 20th anniversary of the NHL's first Winter Classic game, which was played in Buffalo. The Sabres may not be able to bring back the New Year's Day game, but they're hoping for a Stadium Series game, which is typically played in February. It couldn't have worked out better, Gwallie said. You create your strategy and try to execute it at the highest level possible, but then you also need to be fortunate, and things have timed up perfectly. All the activity continues to put the Sabres in good position for future hockey-related events, as well as being a boon for a new lease that will likely include public funding that will need funding for needed improvements at the 30-year-old arena. Activating the corridor around the arena has been key for the Sabres as the team tries to negotiate a longer-term lease while the current one has 4 more seasons to run. Gwallie said negotiations remain preliminary, but some good initial discussions have been ongoing. Erie County, which owns the arena building, and the state and city are expected to be part of the negotiations. Now that the stadium ribbon cutting has happened and the building is close to opening, all sides involved can turn their attention more to the arena, Gwallie said. It just puts us in a position to continue all the discussion we are having about downtown and about what's next, Gwallie said. I think everybody grasps what the possibilities are down there now. It's time to bring that vision and make it a reality.
Boy, it's going to be a mess with all those people today.
I think I'll stay home.
Yeah, me too, because I don't like crowds to begin with, and going downtown's not my favorite activity.
Actually, we have a volunteer recognition dinner tonight. I'll be there.
Well, there's a request to stop the mask ban before it starts is denied. From Patrick LeCamp. Department of Justice lawyers pressed a federal judge Wednesday for a preliminary injunction against New York's law enforcement's mask ban, telling him it was urgent for him to act before the ban takes effect Friday. That's today. But U.S. District Attorney Judge Lawrence Velardo rejected the request for a quick hearing on the matter. You're asking me to do something in 3 days, the judge said. Nope, it's not going to happen. Before Velardo even considered a preliminary injunction on a face mask, he'll decide a federal case should be handled in Buffalo, the Western District of New York Federal Court, or by a different judge in Albany located in the federal courts system's Northern District of New York. The law enforcement mask ban is part of a law passed this spring during the state's budget process. Velardo told the Justice Department lawyers they could have filed their lawsuit sooner given their concern about the law's timing. The federal government filed its lawsuit Monday evening 4 days before the law goes into effect. The law was signed on May 27th, Velardo said during a video court hearing. You've known about this since then. That's an emergency of your own making, isn't it? Velardo asked. Your Honor, we believe this was an emergency of New York's making, replied Brandon D. Newman, a trial lawyer for the U.S. Department of Justice's Civil Defense Division. Our officers could be arrested under this law, Newman said. That's key urgency. Governor Kathy Hochul on Wednesday said the state will defend the law in court. We passed a law that if someone is exercising law enforcement authority here in New York, they should not be able to conceal their identity from the public because hiding your face is nothing more than a fear tactic, an intimidation tactic, Hochul said. And that's not how we keep people safe in this state. And this law applies equally to local, federal, and state officials. For nearly 250 years, American law enforcement didn't regularly hide their faces, the governor said. It's not a radical idea. As our nation approaches our new anniversary of 250 years, they don't need to do so now. The Department of Justice lawsuit said protecting the personal identities of federal officers has become necessary in part due to increasing threats of targeted harassment and retaliation against federal officers and agents. As for how long it took to file the lawsuit, Department of Justice lawyers said they had to prepare and review multiple declarations from many federal agencies completed within 3 weeks from when the state legislature passed the measure and Hochul signed it into law. The Justice Department lawyers said federal officials did not know what would be in the final version of the law until it was signed, but the judge was not swayed. You asked me to move heaven and earth to give you an injunction by Friday, Velardo said. That seems a little unreasonable and a little presumptuous. The judge added, I'm not getting what the emergency is now when you had all this time to do it. It seems to me that if you wanted to get something done sooner, that you certainly could have. Velardo noted the district court's busy calendar, including the increase in immigration cases because of the Trump administration's effort to keep immigrant detainees locked up in the Buffalo Federal Detention Facility in Batavia. Get in line, Velardo added. I got a long list of people waiting for decisions, and I don't see the need for the urgency. The ban covers state, local, and federal law enforcement officers, but state lawmakers clearly aimed the ban at U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, whose agents have arrested immigrants and clashed with protesters amid one of the largest deportation efforts in U.S. history. The state's new face covering law prevents law enforcement officers from wearing any face covering that conceals their facial identity while interacting with the public. Also, uniformed law enforcement officers must display the name of their agency or department and at least one form of identification of the officer, such as the officer's name, badge number, or shield number. The state also prohibited law or local governments and state agencies from entering into agreements with the federal government that allow for local and state law enforcement and corrections personnel and facilities to be used for civil immigration enforcement purposes. The law, passed as part of the state's budget process, requires local governments, law enforcement agencies, state and local correctional facilities, juvenile detention centers, and youth and family services facilities for use to terminate agreements with the federal government by August 25th. The Justice Department lawsuit said the federal law enforcement agencies cannot and will not comply with challenged laws which are unconstitutional. State lawyers have sought to transfer the lawsuit to Albany. State officials announced Tuesday that the state has sued the Trump administration in federal court in the Northern District of New York to protect the new package of state laws. The federal government has sued the state of New York, which has its capital in Albany, the governor of New York, whose executive residence and principal offices are in Albany, the Attorney General of New York, whose primary office is in Albany, challenged state laws and recently enacted by New York State Legislature, which sits in Albany, according to the court filing signed by Assistant Attorney General Joel Tirinoli. The federal government, despite having previously filed two unsuccessful lawsuits in Albany challenging New York's laws or policy relating to immigration, now files this suit in Buffalo, according to the court filing. Velardo asked the Justice Department lawyer why the federal government sued in Buffalo. The federal government has 14 agreements with a dozen agencies in 11 counties and municipalities, including with local police and county sheriff departments for reasons related to task force initiatives, warrants, or jail enforcement. 6 of the agreements are in western New York, and 6 others are in northern New York State, with a couple of others in different parts of the state, Newman said. Of the 6 agreements in the Northern District, only one is in the court's Albany division. Of the 6 in western New York, 4 are in the Buffalo division. It's one of the reasons why we brought this in Buffalo, Newman told the judge, adding that anywhere in New York is a proper venue given the law's statewide effect. Velardo set a briefing schedule on the venues issue, with the federal government given a deadline of Friday to submit its papers and the state having until Wednesday to respond. If the judge wants to hear oral argument, it would not be held till after July 6th, he said. And Velardo did not set a briefing schedule on the preliminary injunction, intending to wait on that till he rules on the venue motion. So, next.
Why bring that suit in Buffalo where the judge is a known attitude, absolutely despising BS?
Really?
Oh, well.
Well, you are listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service, and it's 18 minutes past the hour. We move now to editorials. And willing to learn, Buffalo students of all ages are finding new ways to excel. It sounds like good news.
Mm-hmm.
It's an inspiring story. In the winter of the 2023 to 24 school year, the Okasiwa Agbetowaka was a new arrival in the East Community High School, armed only with basic English skills. And now she's at the top of her class. Okasiwa's journey, which started in Togo in West Africa, is an example of perseverance, determination, and accomplishment against the odds. She entered a Buffalo high school that, as News' Ben Sugimoto writes on the bright side is persistently struggling with attendance, student suspensions, and academic achievement. But that didn't hinder Akosiwa, a quiet teen who speaks softly, fluent in French, and an indigenous language. She had studied English for about 6 years before moving to Buffalo with her mother. They came to join her stepfather and begin a new chapter in the United States. Akosiwa highlights Global 10 as a pivotal point. It was one of the first classes she took at East, taught by social studies teacher Caitlin Orgek, who worked with her one-on-one both after school and during class. Hard work paid off in class and in taking the Regents biology exam 3 times, passing it on the 3rd try. Keep in mind that Akosiwa, who plans to attend the University of Buffalo where she will study biomedical sciences, had to take that Regents exam in English just a few years after arriving in the United States. Akosiwa's accomplishments stand as a reminder of what determination and perseverance can do.
Yeah, determination, perseverance, and hard work.
And hard work.
The other half of the editorial, education of a different type, which teaches people of all ages, skills, and crafts essential to everyday life, provides another inspiration story. As reported by the News' Jonathan Epstein, Dennis Mahar, a clinical assistant professor, I'm going to try this one more time, a clinical assistant professor of architecture at the University of Buffalo and director of the Building Arts program in the School of Architecture and Planning, is making a big impact outside the academic community. Mahar's Assembly House, located inside a 150-year-old former church, teaches high school, college, and adult students how to study, repair, and replicate historic architectural features, including original walls, original plaster, wood trusses, and stained glass windows. The church is the perfect setting to create rooms around the open space where students' craftsmanship can shine. Assembly House is located in the former Immaculate Conception Catholic Church at 150 Edward Street and is a community construction workshop, art space, and demonstration site. It uses the structure of the church as the raw material for new projects and a model for experimentation. Mahar bought the dilapidated church about a dozen years ago and hopes to expand with more public tours and displays of student work at galleries and online for sale. He hopes the effort will result in new revenue streams to sustain the $1.2 million nonprofit, which relies primarily on philanthropy. It is easy to see why the Assembly House won the 2021 Great Places Award from the Environmental Design Research Association and Project for Public Spaces, and recently received the Pillar of New York Award from the Preservation League of New York State. By teaching traditional building skills while preserving and reimagining a historic Buffalo church, Assembly House demonstrates how education can preserve craftsmanship, inspire creativity, and strengthen the community.
I like that.
Yep.
Well, now we move to the editorial cartoons. We have one, of course, from Adam Ziglis. And he has a drawing of a large industrial bin labeled Decades of Industry in the yellow triangle with that little danger symbol in the middle with the 3 little circles. And what appears to be a tea bag being dunked in a barrel of smoking fluid that's probably very toxic, and it's a tea bag being held by a skeletal remains of a hand with this person inside the tea bag labeled Niagara Falls. And that poor city just can't get itself off the ground. I hope they succeed eventually. Then from Michael Ramirez and the Creators Syndicate, we have another cartoon with a drawing of 10 Downing Street in England with a help wanted temp job on the front door. And this is, of course, the headquarters where the recently resigned Prime Minister had his headquarters, and apparently they're trying to get somebody else to fill that job.
Apparently.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, indeed. Meanwhile, Clarence Page, a fairly common contributor to this page from the Tribune Content Agency, Clarence Page says Trump is never too busy to celebrate himself at our expense. Exactly what does it mean to be an American in 2026? Two distinctly and significantly different versions showed themselves in recent days. On the south side of Chicago, there was the long-awaited opening of the Obama Presidential Center. In the presence of 3 past presidents and an assembly of dignitaries and stars from the music world, former President Barack Obama saluted American values we can all share, and he expressed his faith that Americans are looking for fairness and common sense and mutual respect, that deep in our gut we want to find a way to turn towards each other again, not further away. A few days earlier, on the White House lawn in Washington, a very different celebration took place. Its centerpiece was a less permanent, yet still pretty expensive structure, a 600-ton steel and star-spangled claw, which to Gal Beckerman of The Atlantic looked like it was about to pick up the White House like a stuffed animal in an arcade game. This was the setting for UFC Freedom 250, an evening of mixed martial arts matches staged to celebrate President Trump's 80th birthday and apparently our nation's semi-quincentennial. One of my favorite long words. Among other crowd pleasers, it included an Air Force flyover, a Marine Corps band with singers, military honor guards, and so-called octagon girls in sequined red, white, and blue costumes to parade around the big cage between rounds for a spectacle that, perhaps intentionally, reminded many of ancient Roman gladiator matches.
Oh, boy. Trump Fight Club, as some wags called it, drew 17 million views on Paramount Plus in addition to a few thousand lucky spectators on White House grounds. Machismo was the theme of the evening, and it inspired at least one brawl to break out at the watch party held by the Ellipse nearby. To say it was tacky would be to give quiet satisfaction to all involved in the planning and production of the event. This certainly was the intent. To bring cage fighting into the inner sanctum of American political power was the ultimate hat tip to Trump to his base. Yet in typical MAGA fashion, they took it too far. After Josh Hoke had defeated Derek Lewis in a heavyweight bout, he failed to show some class when he needed it most. While speaking to UFC analyst and podcast star Joe Rogan, he decided to be cute by taking a verbal shot at former First Lady Michelle Obama. After praising my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, he loudly repeated a long-running conspiracy theory from the foggy brain corners of the paranoid right. Lastly, he announced Michelle Obama is a man. Am I right, America? Wrong, according to her 2 daughters, among others. While the crowd's rowdiest members cheered and others grimaced, even Trump appeared to register how wrong this was, as TMZ's camera captured him quickly removing from around his neck the necklace that Hoke had given to him earlier. Really? Was this a rare display of shame on Trump's part? Evidence of a shred of human decency? Don't bet on it. Earlier in the month, after all, he posted to his Truth Social platform an AI-generated image of a decrepit Obama Center and an overflowing garbage can, sitting him in a bombed-out hellscape that was supposed to be the South Side. It's hardly the first time Trump has gone viral with a depiction of Chicago created by or for people who have never been to Chicago. At this point, it should surprise nobody that Trump was not invited to the opening of the Obama Center. The two men have fundamentally different visions of America. Without plumbing too deeply into Trump's pathologies, suffice it to say that he and his supporters have a deep psychological need to tear down Obama and all he stood for and accomplished. It's a complex that's produced more and more serious problems for America, Iran. There's a tendency to accept that red versus blue America is a natural consequence of an intractable difference in culture, and Trump has willingly exploited that. Unfortunately, too many of us accept the idea. A lot of people are upset by the notion of bringing cage fights to the White House, shuddering at the bad taste of it all. This is a mistake. President Theodore Roosevelt engaged in similar sparring on the premises, which left him with a detached retina in his left eye, which he also had kept secret for more than a decade.
Manliness is a touchy subject these days. But there was a time when honorable combat was respected above the mere running of one's mouth. Ernest Hemingway famously declared, "My writing is nothing, my boxing is everything." To him, the ring was a profound philosophical stage on which the virtues of discipline, resilience, and raw honesty were tested, reflecting much the same demands he placed on his writing. Trump, a fan of Rough Riding TR, no doubt covets the imputed manliness of enjoying a good fight, though you'll never catch him in the ring. Still, I say let him indulge in his UFC fandom if it distracts him enough to go quietly after his term is up.
Good luck.
Let's leave him and his manosphere fanatics to their lame trolling and hijinks, while remembering that plenty of ordinary Americans seek more than entertainment. For his entire life, Trump has been driven by grandiosity, solipsism, impulsiveness, lack of empathy, obsession with power and dominance, and a bottomless need for praise and adulation, and an obsession with avenging the littlest perceived slights. He's done a lot of damage to the American body politic and to American interests at home and abroad, but he has not snuffed out Americans' conviction that together we can form a more perfect union. As America approaches its 250th birthday, that is worth celebrating. Thank you, Clarence Page of the Tribune Content Agency.
You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. It's now 30 minutes past the hour, and we're going to move on to My View. And today our writer is Bob O'Connor of Hamburg, who is disconcerted by a coffee shop encounter, and I always enjoy his columns. As a hard-working member of the retirement class, I'm retired, I shouldn't laugh. I was sitting in a coffee shop sipping caffeine and struggling with the daily crossword puzzle. I would need a nap later. An elderly woman toddled over to my table, and a little girl voice said, "Sir, you are an exceptionally handsome man." I pretended I guess such words of praise all the time and thanked her. And truth is, it was the first time anyone had described me as exceptionally good-looking. As I was basking in the warm glow of self-satisfaction like my brothers Brad Pitt and George Clooney, I noticed the same lady approach another gent sitting a few tables from me, and I overheard her say, "Sir, you are an exceptionally handsome man." The guy, who I thought was definitely not as good-looking as I am, positively beamed. I had the urge to rush over to this clown and tell him, "She says that to all the guys, and she saw me first." You gotta love this guy. I stayed seated, feeling a little let down and oddly jealous. Then I heard a younger woman call out, "Okay, Sally, time to get back in the van." Apparently, our Sally was on a field trip from a nursing home or some other local institution. The incident got me thinking, why did it take into my 8th decade on Earth for someone to recognize my stunning polka troupe? And why did it have to be another senior citizen who clearly had lost a few marbles? Some 60 years ago, my future wife and I met, and we were freshmen in high school. I was a skinny runt with a shock of black curly hair and a lack of social skills. I thought she was beautiful, and she thought I was a poor kid from the wrong side of the tracks. Back in the late 60s, I favored ratty flannel shirts and wrinkled khakis that I called my derelict pants. I was hardly a catch. Plus, my dad used to cut the hair of all 6 of his sons. He never got good at it. We all looked like ragamuffins with misshapen skulls. Mom wouldn't allow dear old Dad to cut the hair of my 5 sisters. When I entered college, I went to my first real barber. The guy had a little shop on South Park Avenue, and he actually laughed when I walked in the door. He called me Weed Whacker Head and asked who had been butchering my hair. I felt kind of bad for my father. He did his best. I left the shop with a newfound confidence. My tonsorial splendor provided the push I needed to ask a girl out on my very first date. True, I was now 18 years old. Stop judging me. After nearly 2 decades of living the life of a Capuchin monk, I was primed to have a social life. At the urging of my sisters, I even upgraded my wardrobe with a supervised trip to J.C. Penney's. Mm-hmm. I called the girl I had met 4 years earlier, and after a whirlwind romance of 6 years, we married. I gotta love this guy. We had 4 semi-wonderful kids and now delight in 7 wonderful grandkids. My children, who are all smarter and better looking than their old man, got a big kick out of my encounter with the coffee shop lady. Daughter number 2 is incredulous. "She really thought you were handsome?" Son number 1 had a few questions. "Did you get her number? Are we going to get a new mommy?" Children keep you humble. If I had them around my teen years, I'd have never gotten a date. I gotta get a tissue and wipe the tears out of my eyes.
It's wonderful.
This is hilarious.
Even as kids have a sense of humor.
That's hilarious.
Indeed.
And as from Bob O'Connor of Hamburg, you knew it had to be good.
A frequent contributor to this column, and his stuff is always worth reading.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, another voice comes today from Ryan Tauchran, candidate for New York State Assembly in the 143rd District. He says, across Western New York, two issues continually come up as I speak with community members: AI data centers and AI-powered surveillance cameras. These are serious threats to individual freedoms and community health in our region. It is time for elected officials and candidates alike to listen, learn, and be honest about what is at stake. Earth Justice reporting found that 1 in 4 New Yorkers already cannot afford their energy bills, and this is before the rapid build-out of AI data centers. Currently, there are 28 large data centers projects in the queue to connect to New York's power grid, adding an estimated 9,682 megawatts of demand onto this strained infrastructure. New York's legislature took this seriously, passing the Responsible Data Center Development Act and placing a 1-year moratorium on large AI data center construction, making sure communities have a better understanding of environmental impact and a voice before shovels go in the ground. Next, there are automated license plate readers. Locally, Flock is most commonly used by municipalities. These AI-powered cameras are spreading quickly, sold to local governments as public safety tools. Certainly, some law enforcement uses are legitimate. However, the Electronic Frontier Foundation spent much of 2025 documenting how Flock's network was built for mass surveillance. For example, a single Flock query can reach more than 83,000 cameras across nearly the entire country with minimal oversight. Taxpayers are funding a private, for-profit surveillance network that research suggests does not consistently reduce crime. Should a handful of billionaires and tech oligarchs be allowed to profit from tracking your daily movements with no meaningful regulation? Should your community's land, water, and power grid be surrendered to the wealthiest corporations in human history before a single public hearing is held? Legislators must demand transparency in government contracts with surveillance companies, require real environmental review before data centers are approved, and make sure corporations, not residents, pay for the infrastructure they consume. If elected this November, I will. Our land, our water, our privacy, and our freedoms are not for sale. So the thoughts of Ryan Tauchran, a candidate for New York State Assembly in the 143rd District.
Well, we will move now to Buffalo next. And from David Goldman of CNN, exploding oil? We'll find out as wells open. The moment of truth is just about here as oil prices return to their pre-war levels on Thursday, or at least we hope so. The Strait of Hormuz has reopened for now, and the Middle Eastern countries that shut off their oil wells during the war, the term is actually shut in, are about to turn those valves back the other way and find out what they've got. Could be a gusher, or if President Trump's predictions are accurate, a series of underground explosions could cause the oil wells to deliver a trickle. That's highly unlikely, but as with most of Trump's sensational claims, there's at least a kernel of truth to it. Shortly after Iran effectively shut down the Strait of Hormuz to foreign tankers, local energy producers ran out of places to store the accumulating oil and gas. Iran and many neighboring Middle Eastern nations shut down their production. Shut-ins are not like flipping off a light switch. They represent a complex engineering challenge that involves serious physics and meticulous planning over the course of days or even weeks. When oil wells are shut in, the pressure underground can become imbalanced, deforming the underlying structure. Those changes can damage reservoirs, which can create similar problems for nearby wells, too. Water can seep in, reducing the well's potential output. Extended downtime can also damage equipment. Pumps and lift systems can easily become corroded. Sand and debris can settle in. Concrete casing and tubing used to seal and extract oil can lose integrity, causing leaks and potential hazardous gas releases. And yes, in rare cases, explosions. But the way Trump described it isn't more than reality. Serious damage, let alone explosion, almost certainly didn't happen during the course of war. Oil industry analysts agree. A key question is whether prolonged shut-ins could translate into permanent production losses, said Natasha Kaneva, head of global commodity strategy for J.P. Morgan. These risks are likely overstated. Wells have been shut in for extended periods before, including in Iran. During the early days of the pandemic, when basically no one was traveling anywhere, the world ran out of room to store fuel that no one wanted, and oil was literally selling for negative dollars. Producers around the globe shut in their wells without any significant lasting damage. Some Middle Eastern suppliers have also temporarily shut their wells when OPEC production caps kicked in. The oil industry, even in a country as economically battered as Iran, handled the problem just fine then. It is well equipped to handle it again this time around, and shut-ins can sometimes benefit a well, Kaneva noted. They can rebalance the underground pressure and even more oil comes out than before. Restarting production at the end of the war isn't like flipping a switch either. The problem just works in reverse. Production will need to be restarted slowly over several weeks to ensure crude reservoirs don't collapse, requiring re-drilling and substantial repairs. Producers will have to balance underground pressure as they inject water and gas into wells to extract the oil. Because wells in the region are large and close to another, restarting production will require significant coordination across companies and countries to ensure consistent pressure across multiple wells. Otherwise, cave-ins, leaks, and catastrophic damage to wells can occur. Anytime a well is shut in, a producer runs the risk of reduced oil flow when it's restarted. To prevent that, some operators maintain low oil flow rates akin to dripping a faucet in freezing cold weather to avoid frozen pipes. So there is another theory shot.
I had no idea. Meanwhile, Jonathan Epstein reports on some development. An affiliate of the Erie County Industrial Development Agency agreed Wednesday to issue tax-exempt bonds to pay for the renovation of more than 500 apartments in 21 affordable housing properties. The Buffalo and Erie County Industrial Land Development Corporation authorized the sale of $350 million in bonds and up to $3 million in tax breaks for a joint effort by the P29 Foundation of Ashton, Maryland, and Buffalo-based Good Carbon Company to renovate 526 apartments in Buffalo and the town of Evans. The foundation plans to buy 20 buildings in Buffalo and a complex in Evans before undertaking a rehab that includes $210 million of building infrastructure, with geothermal systems, electrical upgrades, new HVAC systems, battery energy storage systems, and interior renovations. Good Carbon, a real estate firm specializing in environmentally friendly renovations, would act as developer. The goal is to rehabilitate existing affordable housing, reduce operating costs, and ensure that they will be sustainable for the long term. The inclusion of renewable energy and energy efficiency technology will qualify the project for federal investment tax credits, which Good Carbon will sell to investors as part of the project financing. The units include 107 studio apartments, 269 one-bedroom units, 145 two-bedroom units, 4 three-bedroom apartments, and 1 four-bedroom unit. All will be priced to be affordable for households earning no more than 60 to 80% of AMI for the duration of the bond. And meanwhile, separately, the Buffalo and Erie County Regional Development Corporation, another ECIDA affiliate, approved a $1.94 million loan to Lackawanna-based Iroquois Bar, a Native American-owned construction company that is buying new equipment so it can meet increased demand for road milling services. The construction company, owned by Thomas Saya, started out by fabricating and installing reinforcing steel and concrete, but has expanded to include general construction for jobs ranging from $1,000 to $350 million, as well as concrete supply, rebar supply, trucking, and most recently, road milling. The milling service has grown much faster than expected, resulting in a backlog of work that it can't support without more equipment and staff. The loan will allow the company to buy 3 new milling machines at $646,000 each while creating 20 jobs. It's part of a larger $5.9 million project, with M&T Bank loaning $2.3 million and the company using $1.7 million of its own capital. Well, who knew that milling was such a big thing?
Well, it is now.
I guess it is.
Well, as part of our newspaper reading, we now present the day's death listings. And if you need further information on any of these names, please call us at 716-821-5555. That's 716-821-5555. And we only have a few names today. Dolores Byron, who is 88 years old. Clifford Parks Sr., who was 81 years old. James Gray, who was 90 years old, and Charles E. Holmberg, who is 84 years old. If you need further information on any of these names, please call us at 716-821-5555. That's 716-821-5555.
Turning to the stars.
Stars.
George Nichols says, happy birthday for Friday, June 26, 2026. This year is about service. Focus on your personal responsibilities and your well-being, because it's important to take care of yourself, since others will turn to you for guidance, comfort, and courage. Enjoy personalizing your home. The stars show the kind of day you'll have. For Aries, accidents and travel changes might occur late in the day. Be alert. Tonight, explore and learn. For Taurus, be patient with partners and close friends this morning. Keep an eye on your possessions to protect yourself against loss at the end of the day. Tonight, check your finances. Gemini, today has some challenges. It begins with optimism with your work, your health, or a pet. Later, you might feel annoyed with someone, and late in the day, unexpected events with partners and close friends will occur. Stay chill. Tonight, listen and cooperate. For Cancer, unexpected changes, high-tech glitches, staff shortages, and power outages are likely. Oops. Tonight, get organized. Leo, this is a feel-good day. Enjoy a second cup of your morning brew and count your blessings. Tonight, socialize. For Virgo, stock the fridge, because late in the day, something unexpected might change your home routine. Be ready. Tonight, relax. For Libra, this morning, you have a warm feeling in your tummy about your finances. They look good. Tonight, conversations. Scorpio, the moon is in your sign today, dancing with Jupiter, giving you a warm feeling in your tummy. All is well. Tonight, check your possessions. Sagittarius, you might be annoyed with a coworker, but it's minor. An unexpected exchange with a spouse or partner might catch you off guard. Tonight, you win. Capricorn, it's a friendly morning. You have much to look forward to. Be patient with kids and romantic partners, because squabbles might arise. Tonight, privacy. Aquarius, you're high viz today. In fact, people admire you, especially at work. Don't get sucked into arguments with bosses or supervisors. Tonight, be friendly. And finally, Pisces, you might be excited about travel plans or doing something socially today, or something related to sports or your kids. Perhaps romance is in the air. Avoid arguments later in the day, especially if your home routine is interrupted. Tonight, you're admired. Oh, that's the news from Georgia Nichols.
And for a plan to convert, let me grab this story. The plan to convert the former school to get tax breaks from the ECI. Oh, don't we already have that one? I think we already read that, didn't we?
No.
No, we didn't. The Erie County Industrial Development Agency is backing 2 adaptive reuse projects to convert a former Catholic school in Cheektowaga into a service facility for Buffalo Hearing and Speech Center. This is different. And to transform a pair of vacant Niagara Street houses into 14 affordable apartments. The Buffalo Hearing and Speech Center, which provides hearing, speech, and autism and other services for children and families, is seeking to buy and renovate the vacant former elementary school and convent of the St. Aloysius Gonzaga Catholic Church campus in Cheektowaga. It would use the school to centralize and expand its public school-funded early intervention and special education program for children with developmental challenges, disabilities, and special needs. It will consolidate its current Amherst and Cheektowaga school locations, which currently serve a combined 120 to 140 students, but are outdated and inadequate to meet the growing demand for service. The $9.3 million project would give it more than 20 classrooms, enabling the agency to serve 40 more children in its first few years of operation. Plans call for the nonprofit to purchase the $50,000 square school building, the separate convent building, and the 5-acre property at 157 Cleveland Drive for $825,000, and then spend $5.8 million on an overhaul to update the 3-story school. The purchase does not include the St. Aloysius Church or the rectory, which remain with the parish. ECIDA approved more than $750,000 in tax breaks for the project. The Buffalo hearing will retain 47 full-time jobs and create 18 new ones. And then the Niagara Street Apartments. West Side businessman and real estate investor William Breeser wants to renovate 2 historic but vacant apartment houses that are next to each other on Niagara Street, creating 2,380 square feet of commercial space and 14 one-bedroom apartments. He has owned the 2 buildings at 1273 and 1277 Niagara Street since 2010 and 2013 respectively, but couldn't finance a project until now. The $4.1 million project will consist of 9 apartments at 1273 Niagara and 5 at 1277 Niagara, all 503 square feet in size. All will be priced to be affordable to households earning no more than 80% of the area median income, making them workforce housing. Known as the Ogden Burgess buildings, the two houses were constructed in 1886 and are considered contributing structures to the Upper Black Rock Historical District, so the project qualifies for state and federal historic tax credits, and work will be completed according to federal standards. The houses have been vacant for 13 years. Typically, with adaptive reuse projects that it supports, ECIDA expects a minimum number of units to be priced as affordable, in this case, just 1, based on the project size, with the rest is market rate because of the high cost of historic renovations, so officials were surprised that Breeser chose to make all of them affordable. Good on him. ECIDA approved $198,468 in sales and mortgage recording tax breaks, while Breeser plans to seek property tax break throughout the city. ECIDA CEO John Capolino noted that the agency has approved 4 adaptive reuse projects this year compared to just 1 last year and none in 2024. And then the U.S. inflation rose to 4% for the first time in 3 years. The U.S. inflation increased further in May, breaking above 4.0% for the first time in 3 years as the Middle East conflict boosted energy prices and then potentially drawing the Federal Reserve closer to rising interest rates this year. The Personal Consumption Expenditures Price Index surged 4.1% in the 12 months through May, the largest increase and the first reading above 4.0% since April of 2023, the Commerce Department's Bureau of Economic Analysis said on Thursday. PEC inflation rose by an unrevised 3.8% in April. So that's...
I'm still trying to digest that characterization of those properties on Niagara Street as Upper Black Rock. That's at the corner of Auburn Street. And
I don't know that was Black Rock.
Quite a ways south.
I was just thinking about that. I live near there.
Oh well. From PolitiFact, AI is being used to skew reality in political advertising. Now, there's a surprise, right? In an online ad reviewed millions of times, Texas U.S. Senate candidate James Tallarico appears to be wearing a dress and singing about transgender children. Citizens for Sanity, a conservative nonprofit group, published the ad showing Tallarico wearing an outfit similar to Julie Andrews in The Sound of Music. In the ad, he sings a loose parody of the movie song My Favorite Things with revised lyrics. Boys in white dresses with blue satin sashes, girls dosed with hormones till they grow mustaches. changing the gender of all your offspring. These are a few of my favorite things. The group released another ad that portrayed Tallarico as a disheveled preacher standing in the middle of the street with a sign around his neck saying, God is non-binary. Jesus Christ was a radical feminist. He helped me reckon with my whiteness, my masculinity, Tallarico appears to proclaim in the ad as a woman hurries 3 children past, warning them not to make eye contact. The ads present a lifelike Tallarico, but the events were not real. They were generated with artificial intelligence. It's a part of a changing scene in political advertising, and experts worry about an inundated public trying to make sense of what's real. These Tallarico ads were among 6 Citizens for Sanity posted over several days with AI-generated content mocking the candidate. The group didn't respond to questions for this story, but its ads follow a series of videos in other races across the country that have contained AI, including a few from the Texas primaries, where Democrats and Republicans alike were using the technology. We're almost 6 months out from the midterms, and it's already safe to say that AI-generated political content will play a bigger role than it did in 2024, said Adrian Shelley, Texas Director of Public Citizen. What the actual impact will be remains to be seen. Texas bans political deepfakes 30 days before an election. Breaking a law would be a Class A misdemeanor, but now, months before the midterm election, organizations are using the technology to create their ads. It's hard to say how effective the Texas law is for voters already encountering deepfakes and disinformation, said Zelly Martin, a University of Tampa assistant professor of communication. A lot of the damage is already going to have been done at that point. As of June 22nd, most of what the AI ads remained on Citizens for Sanity's X profile. On Facebook, they gained roughly 1.4 million impressions, or the number of times an ad appeared on the screen, according to data from the Meta ad library. Campaigns can benefit from technology that is able to depict their opponents as appearing to do or say anything at all, Shelley said. Before AI, these sorts of falsehoods require a full movie studio for their creation, and few candidates would have gone to such trouble for results that are still easily detectable as fake. Times have changed. Some of Citizens for Sanity's AI ads highlight real things, Tallarico said, but omit context. Candidates will have to spend more time responding to false narratives when they should be focusing on getting their own message out, Martin said. And as the public is inundated with AI-generated content, voters will have a harder and harder time telling truth from fiction. Not good news.
No. Well, you're listening to a reading of articles on Buffalo News for today, Friday, June 26th of 2026 on your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, and we'll return for more readings after this short break. Your readers today are
Don Williams
and J.J. Patek. We'll see you in a couple.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window, in the Apple App Store, or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you.
And we're back.
We're back.
We'll continue now with our reading of articles from today's Buffalo News. Your readers today are
J.J. Patek.
and Don Williams. Local news. John Harris reports that at the oft-penalized Humboldt House Rehabilitation and Nursing Center, the Buffalo Nursing Home had insufficient interventions in place that allowed one resident to hit 4 other residents. At Buffalo Center for Rehabilitation and Nursing, a certified nurse aide yelled at a resident and threatened that they would get moved to another floor. And at the Jenny B. Richmond Nursing Home in Springville, which is slated to close later this year, staff failed to protect a resident from sexual abuse from another resident. These were among 5 nursing homes in Western New York that were issued fines in recent months, according to the latest batch of state health department records that were updated in mid-June. All told, Humboldt House, Buffalo Center, Jenny B. Richmond Nursing Home, Seneca Healthcare Center in West Seneca, and Fiddler's Green Manor Rehabilitation and Nursing Center in Springville were hit with $373,037 in fines, which included $327,000 in federal penalties and $46,000 in state fines. Humboldt House, Buffalo Center, Jenny B. Richmond, and Fiddler's Green also have an icon next to their names on the Medicare Care Compare website that indicates they've been cited for issues related to abuse. Humboldt House, a for-profit 173-bed facility at 64 Hager Street, faces the largest fines by far. Humboldt House received a $195,218 federal penalty and a $14,000 state fine for an inspection October 10th. Humboldt House, which has an overall federal rating of 2 stars or below average for 19 months, has been a candidate for the Federal Special Focus Facility Program, a watch list made up of the country's poorest performing nursing homes that then get inspected twice as often as other facilities. It is the only Western New York nursing home that is a candidate for the program, according to the most recent list. In the survey completed October 10th, the most serious issue cited by inspectors was Humboldt House's failure to protect residents from abuse. Specifically, inspectors found in records that Humboldt House, as of March 30th, 2024, knew one resident had the potential to be physically aggressive, and the nursing home had interventions in place to keep the resident calm. Despite that, the resident hit 4 other residents on 4 separate dates in February, March, June, and July of 2025, but the facility made no changes to the resident's plan of care after the February 15th or June 7th altercations, inspectors found. Only after the latest incident did Humboldt House in July of 2025 add an intervention to provide the resident with a calm environment in their room when aggression or agitation arose. In a follow-up interview, the nursing home's leadership told the state that the resident had a medication increase July 24th, 2025, and had no behaviors against other residents since then. The nursing home also is evaluating de-escalation techniques. Inspectors also cited Humboldt House for failing to report suspected abuse or neglect to the state in a timely manner. Humboldt House did not return an inquiry seeking comment. Buffalo Center, a 1-star for-profit facility at 1014 Delaware Avenue, owned by Bronx-based Centers Healthcare, faces a $36,478 federal penalty and a $12,000 state fine from an inspection completed November 12th. It's the second recent major fine for the 200-bed Buffalo Center, which early this year was nailed with almost $177,000 in state and federal fines following inspections last year that uncovered violations of residents' rights, an instance of verbal abuse, and unsanitary conditions. In the most recent inspection, November 12th, inspectors cited Buffalo Center for an incident October 29th when a certified nurse aide yelled at a resident in a harsh, demeaning tone for urinating on themselves and their surroundings, according to records. The aide then threatened the resident that they were going to get moved to another floor. After the encounter, inspectors reported the resident was tearful and appeared saddened. Buffalo Center did not immediately provide a comment for this story. Jenny B. Richmond, a nonprofit Jenny B. Richmond nursing home in Springville, is expected to close around October 31st after its leadership decided that continued operation of the 80-bed facility was no longer financially feasible. The nursing home has a 3-star or average federal rating and hadn't been penalized for several years, but an inspection completed in June of 2025 led to a $6,000 state fine and a $68,591 federal fine. From that inspection, the most serious deficiencies cited were the nursing home's failure to protect a resident from resident-to-resident sexual abuse and its failure to timely report the abuse allegations to the state health department. Inspectors found that one resident exhibited inappropriate sexual behavior in front of another resident on 2 occasions in September of 2024. That resident had a history of inappropriate behavior, according to inspection records. The same resident had an additional incident in front of another resident in July 2024, but that instance was not reported to nursing home administration until September. That led to a delay in reporting the allegations to the state, and Jenny B. Richmond did not respond to an inquiry seeking comment. Seneca Healthcare Center is a nonprofit nursing home, part of the McGuire Group. A 160-bed facility has a 4-star or above-average federal rating. It had last been fined more than 3 years ago, but it was hit with a $10,000 state fine and a $14,015 federal penalty related to an inspection completed November 5th. The nursing home was cited for an incident involving a resident whose health care plan called for them not to be left alone in the bathroom while toileting. But last July, the resident was helped into the bathroom by a certified nurse aide who left the room for less than 2 minutes to retrieve clean linen to provide care. When the aide returned, the resident was on the floor outside the bathroom door. From the fall, the resident suffered a left hip fracture that required surgery. In a follow-up call with inspectors, the aide said they had not reviewed the resident's care plan before providing care, and they know they should have. The McGuire Group declined to comment. Fiddler's Green Manor Rehabilitation and Nursing Center, a 82-bed for-profit facility, has a 1-star or much below average federal rating. It faces a $4,000 state fine and a $12,735 federal penalty tied to an inspection completed November 10th. That inspection focused on an incident that happened the previous November when a certified nurse aide shared a photograph with coworkers that showed a resident during incontinence care. The resident did not give consent to be photographed, the inspection noted. In an interview with inspectors, the facility's director of quality assurance said staff members should not be on their phones in resident care areas. The incident was an invasion of the resident's privacy and a form of abuse, the director of quality assurance said. Fiddler's Green did not respond to an inquiry seeking comment. Well, some trouble in the nursing home industry locally.
Yeah, really. Makes you afraid to go to a nursing facility if you need it. Well, Hasty says voter frustration and demographics hurt incumbents. This is from Robert Gavin from the Albany Bureau Chief. The leader of the Democratic-controlled Assembly on Thursday attributed the wave of successful Democratic Socialist-backed candidates in Tuesday's party primary to changing demographics and frustration among voters. Assembly Speaker Carl Hasty, Democrat from the Bronx, told reporters he supported all Assembly Democrat incumbents who faced primaries on Tuesday, which included at least 20, of whom 1 and 3 who lost against candidates aligned with the Democratic Socialists of America. Hasty said he's reaching out to all the Assembly Democratic primary winners, including candidates who won open seats, welcoming them to his conference. Some of those districts that lost, these are very tough districts, Hasty said after touring a future community grocery store location in downtown Schenectady, joined by Assembly member Angelo Santa Barbara, a Democrat from Rotterdam. Changing demographic in those districts are happening, but primaries are primaries, and the voters have spoken. Asked if he could have done more to help incumbents, Hasty said no. I don't believe in that. If you look at the voting patterns in those districts, I'm not shocked at the outcome, Hasty said. I support the incumbents, but again, these are changing communities, and voters sometimes change who they want to have representing them. Hasty. Senate Majority Leader Andrea Stewart Cousins, a Democrat from Yonkers, and Governor Kathy Hochul are the 3 most powerful figures in the state government. Casey said polling has shown that voters can sometimes express their general irritations at the status quo in the voting booth. Sometimes, as much as voters may like the current individual, sometimes you do see places where voters sometimes are frustrated, Hasty said. And sometimes I think when voters are frustrated, they're probably more open to change, even in their own party, as much as I think most of the anger of voters is at the Republican Party now. But he downplayed the significance of the turnover, saying he has a fine relationship with the existing DSA members in the conference. He suggested the press has made too much about the turnover to DSA candidates. We all vote together, we all work together, Hasty said, so I'm not concerned with people's identities and how they won in a primary at all. Assembly Republicans who sit in the minority in the Assembly ripped the victories by DSA-backed candidates in New York City on X, calling them extreme, far-left candidates, whom they said support radical positions that include anti-American rhetoric. On Wednesday, Hochul expressed no disappointment in the loss of establishment-backed candidates. That is exciting as a leader of a state party to know that this energy is there to be harnessed, Hochul told reporters in New York City, and I believe that the individuals who were at these events and who showed up to vote created this momentum understand that everything is on the line this November. The losing incumbents included Senator Jeremy Zellner, a Democrat from Tonawanda, who had Hochul's endorsement but lost a primary to retain the 61st Senate district to Assembly member Jonathan Rivera, a Democrat from Buffalo. Karen Hoke, who was supported by the Erie County Democratic Committee, lost the open seat primary to replace Rivera in the 149th district to attorney Adam Bojack, an attorney backed by the DSA. Hasty said he spoke with Bojack and that the conversation went great. He said he did not endorse a candidate in the primary, and as far as the departure of Rivera, Hasty said, I congratulate John. I love him. I'll be sad to miss him, but I'm losing a few good members. Change is bound to happen.
Yep. Senator Tan reports that a resolution urging Governor Kathy Hochul to ban surveillance pricing, they have surveillance pricing in quotes here, by retailers, which tailors the price of goods to a shopper's past buying habits, passed in a 6-3 vote along party lines in the Erie County Legislature on Tuesday. The One Fair Price Act, which would do exactly this, passed in the state Senate and Assembly and is awaiting Hochul's signature. The local proposal urging Hochul to sign the bill was initially expected to have some bipartisan support, but ultimately the 3 Republicans who attended Thursday's meeting voted against it, calling it an anti-business law that solves a problem we don't have. The impetus for the state law comes as Walmart begins converting all its stores to digital price tags that can be easily changed with the press of a button instead of static signs and paper pricing labels. Meanwhile, online retailers have even greater flexibility to track consumers' buying habits and employ personalized pricing, potentially charging more to consumers who have demonstrated a spending pattern of being willing to pay more. The county resolution urging the governor to adopt the One Fair Price Act was sponsored by Democratic legislators Taisha St. John Tard and Lawrence Dupre. This is not anti-business, Dupre said. This is us making sure there's fair prices for everyone. Republicans, however, disagreed that the state law would not harm businesses. Legislator Lindsay Larigo, a Republican from West Seneca, had initially expressed some interest in supporting a law to ban surveillance pricing, also called personalized pricing, but she changed her mind after doing more research, she said. I was interested in it, Larigo said. I hadn't heard about it till last session and had a discussion about it, but then I read the law itself and I had concerns. Amherst resident Todd Haraxi had spoken out against surveillance pricing at the last legislature session, distributing bottles of Coke to all legislators and creating fictitious scenarios in which certain legislators were charged more for the same soft drink bottle than others. Larigo noted that the Business Council of New York State is opposed to the One Fair Price Act, and that rollouts of other laws that affect commercial retailers, such as a local law banning commercial businesses' use of personally identifiable biometric data, have met with questions and concern. Legislator Chris Green, a Republican from Clarence, said he was concerned about the long-term impact of additional regulations that may handcuff small businesses. Democrats in support of the law said One Fair Price Act is not anti-business, but rather pro-consumer privacy and pricing transparency. Legislator Jean Vinal, Democrat from Amherst, said big box stores are the ones attempting to employ surveillance pricing, not small businesses struggling to compete for shoppers. The One Fair Price Act would bar variable pricing based on a person's buying habits, but it would not prevent what is known as surge pricing. If demand dries up the price of an item, that would still be permitted under the law as long as that higher price is charged equally to all customers and not based on buyers' personal information. We'll see.
Okay. From Jonathan Epstein. Nonprofit tries again to open family shelter. More than a year after community opposition derailed plans for a new 40-bed family shelter in Hamlin Park, the nonprofit that led the effort is ready to try again in a different location that officials hope will ease opposition and make it easier to win approval. Family Promise of Western New York wants to put up a 3-story building at 364 Franklin Street on parking lots just south of Edward Street that is owned by Trinity Episcopal Church. The 21,000 square foot facility would temporarily house up to 10 families at a time, with up to 50 people in all, of whom 40 would likely be children, according to the executive director Luann Firestone. Families at the shelter usually stay for no more than 60 days while staff and caseworkers help them to overcome the crisis of challenges that put them at risk. That's the core purpose behind the organization, which runs a state-certified family stabilization program dedicated to keeping families together as they seek stable housing, Firestone said. We only serve families, Firestone told the board of Buffalo Place as she sought the nonprofit support. You must have a child in your care to qualify for services, which makes us really different than a lot of the other programs you might be thinking of. Children represent 75% of the people whom Family Promise helps, she said, adding that the typical family served by the organization consists of a single mother with 3 children, ages 10 or younger, who are facing housing instability for the first time. That's half the homeless population locally. But those families aren't out on the street, so the problem isn't visible. It's illegal to be on the street with your children. They'd be removed from your care, Firestone said. Those families are bounced around from couch to couch, she said. That puts children at risk. It causes them to miss months at school. They have no privacy. It can impact brain development by young children. Yet that's not the perception the agency often hears, and that's been its biggest source of difficulty, including with its newest proposal, which is already facing opposition from some residents and businesses in the area. When you think of people chronically out on the street, that's not who we serve, Firestone said. We don't serve single adults. We don't serve people with active substance abuse, active mental disorders, people actively fleeing from domestic abuse, or undocumented people, or people with violent criminal histories. All of those people are not safe to be around children. We are only serving families. But one of the city's biggest landlords, Ellicott Development Company, is already hearing resistance from tenants of some of its nearby buildings, including 500 Pearl Street, as well as 344 and 361 Delaware Avenue. They are objecting to another social services type of program in the area, said CEO William Palladino. I like your program, but I'm not sure that's the best place for it, he said. Palladino urged Firestone to speak to those tenants to try to address their concerns. The $12 million facility would represent a major expansion for the 30-year-old Family Promise, a small nonprofit that currently operates a smaller family shelter in a former parish school on Hickory Street for 6 families at a time. It's also in its second attempt. The nonprofit has proposed to construct a temporary shelter for families at the corner of East Ferry and Welker Streets. The $8 million project would have housed 6 to 8 families at a time, with 4 townhouse-style buildings adjacent to offices and a service center, but the project required 4 zoning variances and it was torpedoed by neighborhood concerns. We didn't do the work with community engagement that we should have, and we should have slowed down our process, Firestone said. So this time it plans to spend the next year meeting and talking with the community to make sure its story is understood while seeking funding for its $12 million project. The Trinity East Franklin site is one of the only 2 zoning districts in the city that allow such a project as of right without needing variances. The agency plans to ask the State Office of Temporary and Disability Assistance to finance about 90% of the project cost through its Homeless Housing and Assistance Program, with the rest coming through fundraising. That's expected to take up to a year, and Firestone said the nonprofit won't submit its plans to the city for approval until that funding is secure, likely not until 2027. If approved, she hopes to break ground next summer. Yet even with the proposed new facility, the need remains far greater than the capacity. 10 families is not a big impact in the community, Firestone said. And that is a big need.
Indeed. Speaking of need, it's 20 minutes past the hour. We're going to turn to sports. Sports. Mike Harrington reports that Penn State winger Gavin McKenna, whose life is about to permanently change tonight when the Toronto Maple Leafs make him the number 1 overall pick in the NHL draft at KeyBank Center, was having a good time yesterday morning at the New Era headquarters on Delaware Avenue. Like the other big prospects now in town, McKenna was slated to have a tour of Hat World as part of his day, and I can report that the place is spectacular. It is also where the NHL decided to have its annual media session with the future stars the day before the draft. McKenna said all the right things during his turn at the dais. He is only 18 and has already faced the notebook and microphone crowd for a few years. He is going through the same path as current Leafs captain Austin Matthews did in 2016. Combine in Buffalo, draft in Buffalo, number 1 overall pick by Toronto. The Sabres and Leafs still haven't forged much of a rivalry in the Matthews years because Buffalo was brutal for far too many of them. Now the Leafs are in a downturn they hope will quickly turn around to coincide with the Sabres' rise. So I had a simple inquiry for McKenna. How prepared is he to be a villain in Buffalo for the next decade or so if this rivalry heats up again? McKenna chuckled. He knows what's up here. He knew a dude wearing a Leafs jersey with McKenna on the back got roasted in the stands during one of the Buffalo-Montreal playoff games last month. If I'm not drafted here by the Sabres, I want to be a villain wherever I go, McKenna said. So I guess that's how it goes? That's how it goes. About the only thing we know regarding tonight is that McKenna's going to be number 1. Leafs GM John Chayka pretty much confirmed that yesterday when he told Toronto reporters the pick has been decided upon, and it was a unanimous decision of Leafs front office folk. But everything else about this draft feels like a wonderful chaos. Numbers 2 and 3 seem to be destined for chalk of the last few weeks, with San Jose spurning every offer at 2 to take Swedish winger Ivar Stenberg, and Vancouver tabbing Brentford center Caleb Malhotra to join his dad, new Canucks coach Manny Malhotra. So the draft really starts at number 4 with your Buffalo Sabres as a result of the Bowen Byram trade with Chicago. How wild is that? Hey, way back in early December, didn't it feel like the Sabres are going to draft in the top 5 yet again? You just could not have imagined this would be the route they'd take to get there. It was like, damn, I think Chicago should have kept this pick, said Russian center Ilya Morozov of Miami of Ohio, who was mocked in plenty of places to take the Sabres at number 20. But it's their choice. I was more surprised with Buffalo moving up to 20 from 27 in the Michael Kesselring trade with San Jose because that's where I might go. Still, this corner is going to need a lot of convincing if the Sabres are actually going to make the number 4 pick around 7:30 tonight. Right now, in the wake of trading Byram and Alex Tuch, they're not as good as they were a month ago when they faced Montreal in Game 7 for the chance to go to the Eastern Conference Final. Maybe the Sabres can't resist the urge to take Sault Ste. Marie defense stud Chase Reed, and antennas went up at New Era yesterday morning when Reed revealed that he met with the Sabres on Wednesday and would be stoked to play with Tage Thompson and Rasmus Dahlin. Aside here, that is quite a 36 hours for general manager Jarmo Kekalainen. Fleece the Blackhawks in the Byram trade to get number 4, get a couple assets back for Tuch when those talks went nowhere, sign Zach Benson to a 7-year, $52.5 million contract, and meet with the potential number 4 overall pick. That could be a month's worth of a to-do list for lots of NHL GMs. Kekalainen said Wednesday the Sabres are going to listen and take notes about potential offers for the number 4 pick. He also said the Sabres were fine with their goaltending trio, but lots of others around the game said they're still chatting with Winnipeg about Connor Hellebuyck. The Sabres have more players on hand in their roster and their pipeline to replace Alex Tuch than they do Byram. Defense prospects such as Radim Murtka, Adam Kleber, and Luke Osborne aren't yet NHL ready. There are lots of whispers, however, that they're involved in a hunt for Leafs forward Matthew Knies, and that Toronto would love Reed at number 4 to go with McKenna. Right. Defense is a more dicey proposition for Buffalo. Not many rumors on that front right now. Projection-wise, rumors always are going to be there. Everyone's on social media, and you just recognize it. Everyone has their own opinion, said North Dakota defenseman Nathan Keaton Verhoff, who played junior hockey in the Western League for former Sabres player and assistant coach James Patrick. Being in Buffalo and having them trade up, it's a unique situation, and it's definitely going to make fans a little more excited with the draft. The excitement starts with McKenna and the Leafs. He's a native of Whitehorse in the Yukon, just like former Sabres center Dylan Cousins, and there will be watch parties way up north on tonight to see his big moment. Lots of Leafs fans will be in the stands too, paying exorbitant money for draft tickets like this is some random Friday night in February. It's how they roll. Doesn't really feel real, but it's pretty cool too, McKenna said. Obviously, Toronto is such a big and passionate fan base. If I do get drafted there, I'll be pumped. Sabres fans have to hope Kekalainen does something big to give them the same feeling.
And in more Sabres news from Rachel Lindsay, Sabres have options with 2 first-round picks. Chase Reed certainly isn't averse to the possibilities of playing for the Buffalo Sabres. The defenseman from Sault Ste. Marie of the Ontario Hockey League arrived in Buffalo this week ahead of the NHL draft and immediately started meeting with teams that could have selected him, including the Sabres on Wednesday. I think getting drafted in Buffalo would be cool, pretty cool, and obviously I wouldn't have to travel very far after I get drafted, Reed said. That'd be really cool. Reed also considered the Sabres' recent turnaround, the possibilities that would come with playing for a team with a strong roster and annual Stanley Cup playoffs expectations. Playing alongside Tage Thompson and Rasmus Dahlin would be obviously super cool, and the fact that they're on the upcoming and making the playoffs, it would be a really cool opportunity to get play here. The chances are very real that could happen. The Sabres, a team that broke a 15-year playoff drought, just traded Bowen Byram, one of their top 4 defensemen, to Chicago for the number 4 pick in this year's draft. That's right around the area where Reed is targeted to be picked. The first round opens 7 p.m. Friday at Keystone Bank Center, the Keystone Bank Center. The Sabres will have 2 picks in the first round. The Sabres also had the number 20 pick acquired in a trade with San Jose for Michael Kesselring and number 27. Holding a lower pick is one of the unusual spoils of being a winner in the NHL. In a way, having a draft pick in the lower half of the first round is unfamiliar territory for the Sabres, who have selected no lower than number 16 in the first round since 2012. It's a byproduct of not making the playoffs in that span. If the Sabres choose not to trade number 4, they will have 6 picks in the draft. When it comes to drafting to fill needs in the organization, the Sabres could target a physical presence on the wing or continue to stockpile young defensemen. But Sabres general manager Jarmo Kekalainen outlined his draft strategy Wednesday. Always best player available, Kekalainen said Wednesday in Orchard Park. The needs could change by the time they get ready to play. The needs could be completely different. I think you always go with the best player available. And then there's 4 possible picks at number 4. Caleb Malhotra, a center with Brantford of the Ontario Hockey League. He scored 29 goals with 55 assists in 67 games in his first season of junior hockey. The son of Vancouver Canucks coach and former NHL center Manny Malhotra. Caleb Malhotra has committed to Boston University to play college hockey. Then Carson Carrols, okay. A defenseman with Prince George of the Western Hockey League, Carrols scored 20 goals with 53 assists in 58 games and finished 3rd in the CHL in scoring among defensemen. He plans to play at North Dakota this fall. Chase Reed, a defenseman with Sault Ste. Marie of the OHL. Reed scored 18 goals with 30 assists and was plus 27 in 45 games. He finished 5th in goals among defensemen in the OHL, despite missing part of the season due to an injury in his right wrist, and he's committed to play at Michigan State. And Albert Smits, a defenseman with Jukurit of the Finnish League. Smits is 6'3" and scored 6 goals with 7 assists in 38 games. He also had an assist in 5 games with Red Bull Munich of the German League. Smits played for Latvia in the Winter Olympics in February, and he finished with 2 assists, averaging 18 minutes 44 seconds of ice time in 4 games. And then there's 4 possible picks at number 20. Tony Blale, a defenseman from Moncton of the QMJHL. He's scored 81 points. That's 13 goals and 68 assists in 63 regular season games and 28 points, 6 goals and 22 assists in 21 playoff games, and was named CHL's Rookie of the Year and the QMJHL's Defenseman of the Year, and he originated from the Albany area. J.P. Hurlburt, a left wing from Kamloops of the Western Hockey League. Hurlburt scored 97 points, including 42 goals in 68 games, and was named the WHL's Rookie of the Year. The 6-foot, 183-pound Hurlburt would add depth to the system at wing. Simas Ignatievicius, a right-wing center with Geneva Servette of Switzerland's top professional league. Ignatievicius has size at 6'3" and scored 7 goals with 6 assists and had 43 penalties in 52 games. And Ilya Morozov, a center at Miami at Ohio. He was one youngest player in college hockey this season, and the 6'3" Russian native scored 8 goals with 12 assists as a freshman for the Redhawks. He played a penalty kill and brought a physical component to the lineup. And the Sabres' history at number 4 and number 20, they've been drafting players since the team's NHL inception in 1970, but they never had a number 4 pick. They have, however, drafted 3 players at number 20. In 2002, they selected Daniel Pale, a left wing from Guelph of the Ontario Hockey League. And in 1999, Barrett Heiston, a forward from the University of Maine, who helped Maine with the 1998 NCAA championship, but never played for the Sabres. And in 1980, Steve Patrick, a forward from Brandon of the Western Hockey League, who played for the Sabres, the Rangers, and the Quebec Nordiques from 1980 to 86, including 4+ seasons with the Sabres. So, Assembly Speaker Carl Hastie said he's reaching out to all the Democratic primary winners to welcome them to this conference. So much for hockey.
Let's skip those next 2 sports articles, and I'm
Okay.
supposed to read the Dear Abby column.
All right.
I misprinted that.
All righty.
So, you're listening to a reading of articles from the Buffalo News for today. It's 32 minutes past the hour, and we're going to look to Eric for some advice. It's about that time. And he usually has some pretty good advice, so let's see what today has. Dear Eric, my older sister, with whom I've never been close, is in her 80s and highly dysfunctional with money and life. She can't make ends meet despite being a real estate agent and a substitute teacher. I have loan papers she signed years back promising to pay us back, which never happened. Finally, I put a boundary on us to only pay her rent. My husband fears if we don't, she'll be homeless, which is not what we want at all. We are financially stable and aren't hurting financially, but emotionally, as I feel I'm being used and abused. I recently learned that she borrows lesser amounts of money from my brother and pays him back. Any advice on how to emotionally, if not financially, disengage from her? No one else in the family can or will help her. Upset sister. Dear sister, one solution may be to release the expectation of payback and focus on the emotional wound. Not that she shouldn't pay you back, she should. But it sounds like her problems with money management are also communicating that she doesn't care about the help you're giving or is taking that help for granted. That may make the debt feel even bigger for both of you. Try to have a direct conversation about this arrangement. You may want to start by stating that your financial support isn't contingent on the outcome of this conversation. Tell her how you've felt using I statements and ask if she understands where you're coming from. Tell her how you'd like to feel and how you'd like her to play a part in that, be it by simply acknowledging your help or by making strides to be a better steward of her money. It also sounds like she needs a more extreme intervention. It may not be something you want to take on, but consider financial counseling services for older adults or even conservatorship to help prevent her from mismanaging her money and relieve you of the worry you'll have to clean up a mess for her. Okay, and the other second letter, Dear Eric, one of my sisters and I share a mutual friend. My sister knew her from work. When I moved to a different home, my sister's friend lived on our new street and came over with a gift and introduced herself. Since that point, I had neighborhood brunches to get to know people. From there, my sister's friend, my neighbor, went out to happy hour with her husbands occasionally. The mutual friend told my sister we were all going out. My sister and friend had never gone out. They'd only exercised together. My sister then texted me immediately and asked if we could all go out. I asked the friend to please keep my business to herself and kindly set boundaries with my sister. For context, once I did something with my niece, my niece's children, and my husband. My sister said I should have invited her too. Since this time, my sister has ghosted me. I did ask her to go for a walk and send a happy Mother's Day message, both with no response. I did ask her why she didn't just didn't ask her friend about going out. From what I have read, advice says you cannot force communication and that I offered the olive branch and must move on. I had a friend that cut me off because I couldn't attend her mom's funeral. I feel that there's a lot of this today. I am tired and embarrassed, but mostly hurt. Please advise. Ghosted sister. Dear sister, your sister's actions suggest she has a deep need to feel included that's not being met. But from your telling, she may be trying to satisfy that need in the wrong way, or at least with the wrong people. Your decision to set a boundary and maintain the friendship with your neighbor without her suggests that her request struck a deeper chord, and this isn't just about a single instance. From your letter, you have a desire to make amends, but what you feel you should make amends for and what she wants may not align. It's reasonable that you'd make friendships independent of your sister, especially with a neighbor, but there's also a world where it would have been easiest to just have a group hang out, including her sister. You don't need to apologize for not doing that, but perhaps a good next step would be writing a letter acknowledging the way she feels and asking how, if at all, she'd like your relationship to change. As you wrote to me, you can't force her to respond, and you may need to just let time heal this for her. But by naming what you interpret as a problem, you could help her to separate her feelings from the facts. Oh, good luck with all of that.
Yeah. I know how she feels.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll move on to the front page again. Something I've been reading about for some time now. Rare double quake hits Venezuela. Death toll at 188 may reach 10,000. This is from Antonio Maria Delgado from the Miami Herald. The death toll from the powerful double earthquake that struck Venezuela's Caribbean coast Wednesday has climbed to at least 188 people, with more than 1,520 injured, as rescue crews continue searching through collapsed buildings amid growing fears that the final number of victims could rise significantly. Authorities also report 157 people missing and more than 200 trapped beneath collapsed structures, underscoring the scale of what is becoming one of the worst natural disasters in modern Venezuelan history. Speaking Thursday on state-run television, interim President Delcy Rodriguez said the earlier casualty figures had not yet included victims from La Guaira, the coastal state that neighbors Caracas, and she had described the area hardest hit by the disaster. We can say that the situation in La Guaira state is a true tragedy. It has become a disaster zone. The emergency officials and rescue workers warned that the current death toll might represent only a fraction of the final numbers. Dozens of collapsed buildings in La Guaira, Caracas, and the surrounding urban centers continue to be searched using predictive fatality modeling based on earthquake magnitude, depth, population density, and structural vulnerability. The U.S. Geological Survey estimated that the eventual death toll will most likely reach into the thousands, with a significant probability that fatalities could exceed 10,000 if worst-case scenarios materialize in the hardest-hit urban areas. Adding to concerns, a website created by leaders of Venezuela's opposition helped to track missing persons, listed more than 24,000 people as unaccounted for as of 10:40 a.m. local time Thursday, underscoring the enormous uncertainty regarding the human toll. The figure does not necessarily represent confirmed disappearances because it might include duplicated reports or people temporarily unreachable due to power and communication outages, but it highlights the scale of the chaos facing families searching for loved ones. Wednesday's two powerful earthquakes measuring 7.2 and 7.5 magnitude and that's pretty hard.
Those are biggies.
That's pretty high up there, yeah. Struck about just 39 seconds apart, according to U.S. National Tsunami Warning Center. The agency described the event as a seismic doublet, a rare 1-2 punch in which a pair of major earthquakes occur within seconds of each other in the same region. The stronger second quake, a shallow 7.5 magnitude tremor, caused widespread destruction across Venezuela's central and coastal states. According to the U.S. Geological Survey, the second earthquake struck at 6:04 p.m. local time, with its epicenter about 186 miles east of Caracas, near Montalban, the country's central regions. Because of its shallow depth, the quake was felt intensely across much of Venezuela, including Caracas, where residents described some of the strongest shaking in decades. The scale of destruction is emerging. Jorge Rodriguez, president of Venezuela's National Assembly, said preliminary government assessments show about 250 buildings have either collapsed or suffered catastrophic structural damage nationwide, with the heaviest destruction concentrated in La Guaira, particularly in Carabalada and Playa Grande. Rodriguez said the earthquakes also damaged 8 hospitals, some of which had to be evacuated, forcing authorities to transfer patients to other medical centers while emergency crews worked to restore supplies, medicine, and hydration services. He added that 20 shopping centers and 68 public infrastructure projects were also damaged, bringing the total number of affected infrastructure sites to 346. As of this moment, we must sadly report 188 Venezuelans dead as a result of the earthquake, Rodriguez said. He said that 1,520 injured people have already been admitted to hospitals. Authorities are also racing to locate the missing. Rodriguez said 157 people remain unaccounted for, while more than 200 are believed trapped under rubble. We're in a determined race against time to rescue most of them alive, he said. The disaster has also displaced 2,927 families, many of whom lost their homes or were forced to evacuate unsafe buildings. Residents report evacuations, structural damage, and partial building collapses across multiple neighborhoods. Adriana Meneses Emer, who was in La Floresta in eastern Caracas, said she noticed the lights flickering before a slight movement suddenly turned violent. I had never experienced anything like it, and I lived through the 1967 earthquake as a child, but this was stronger, Meneses told El Nuevo Herald. We started hearing the sound of objects in the house falling and glass breaking. I got under the table. It felt like it lasted 2 or 3 minutes with incredible intensity. Meneses left her home with neighbors and remained in the street fearing additional tremors. She said she felt at least 2 aftershocks and heard reports of broken windows in Los Palos Grandes and partial wall collapses in Altamira. Many Caracas residents spent the night outside, unwilling to return to damaged buildings. Elena Gonzalez, a resident of eastern Caracas, was inside her apartment with her mother, who was in her 90s when the shaking began and the power started failing. I was in the bedroom with my mother and the lights kept going off and coming back on. The moment I felt the earthquake, I hugged my mother and told her, if we die together, Gonzalez told El Nuevo Herald. Neighbors knocked on her door to help evacuate her mother. They remained outside with other residents while feeling at least 3 aftershocks. In La Guaira, the entire sections of Casia de la Mar remained without electricity Thursday after many residents spent Wednesday night sleeping in streets, cars, or near damaged buildings, terrified of further collapses. Journalists sat on the ground and observed deep cracks in residential towers, collapsed walls, and entire structures reduced to rubble. Rescue operations continued across Caracas, where crews searched through collapsed structures in neighborhoods that included El Paraíso, San Bernardino, Maria Perez, and Los Palos Grandes, one of the city's most seismically vulnerable districts. Heavy machinery began arriving after many initial rescue efforts relied largely on manual labor. And the quakes were also felt across central and western Venezuela. In Los Teques, in Miranda State, residents described chaos and damage to buildings and businesses. Iraluz Galindo said she was outside when she heard a deafening roar seconds before the ground began violently shaking. It sounded horrific, as if a jet were flying directly over my head. Then it felt as though I was surfing a wave with the movement, Galindo told El Nuevo Herald. She said several buildings suffered major structural damage, and at La Cascada shopping center, the roof of a store partially collapsed. Carabobo, one of the regions closest to the epicenter, also appears to be hard hit. Juan Carlos Colina, director of Venprensa.com, told El Nuevo Herald the shaking there was especially severe. In the area where I am, in the San Jose district of Valencia, many buildings, including the one where I live, which consists of two 21-story towers, sustained considerable damage, he said. He said 2 water tanks in the building ruptured and multiple buildings developed gas leaks, creating fears of secondary emergencies. People fled the buildings and gathered in the streets, he said. In Barquisimeto, Lara State, Catherine Guaramaco described the experience as unlike anything she'd felt before. It was quite strong. I'd never felt an earthquake so loud, she said. It wasn't just that the shaking was very strong, but there was a sound that echoed. Everything moved, and my house is stable. Speaking in a nationwide television broadcast Wednesday night, Rodriguez declared a state of emergency and confirmed that at least 30 aftershocks had been recorded. As a part of the emergency response, the government suspended operations of the Caracas Metro and National Railway system, canceled classes for the remainder of the week, and halted non-essential activities. Rodriguez also said the country's public and privately health care network had been fully activated to treat the injured, urging doctors, nurses, and other medical personnel to report immediately to work. And she also announced the closure of Maiquetía International Airport, the main gateway serving Caracas, after severe structural damage was reported. And the disaster has triggered an international response. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said Washington would immediately deploy rescue and humanitarian assistance teams to Venezuela. The United States stands with the Venezuelan people during these difficult times, and acting on President Donald Trump's instructions, the State Department is immediately deploying search and rescue teams, medical resources, and humanitarian assistance to Venezuela, Rubio wrote on X. Rodriguez said rescue teams from the United States, Mexico, El Salvador, Qatar, and the Dominican Republic are expected to arrive soon. Venezuela lies in a zone of high seismic activity due to the interaction between the Caribbean and South American tectonic plates. The country has experienced devastating earthquakes before, including the 1967 Caracas earthquake, which killed hundreds and caused widespread destruction in the capital.
2 very, very serious earthquakes, 39 seconds apart. Devastating damage.
That's quick. You didn't even have time to catch your breath.
Not even. Well, back to the world of politics.
Oh, dear.
From David Morgan and Patricia Zangerli of Reuters. President Trump faced pointed criticism over the Iran war in a closed-door meeting with fellow Republicans on Wednesday, shortly before his administration asked Congress for tens of billions of dollars to pay for the conflict. Several Republicans who attended said Trump engaged in a shouting match with Senator Bill Cassidy, who said the administration needed to explain a framework deal Trump signed last week that gives Iran financial incentives but falls short of the goals he laid out at the war's beginning. The American people need to know more than we were being told, Cassidy told reporters. It does not appear, although I don't know for sure, that the course of this is going the way we were told. Later, in what appeared to be an effort to please the president, the Senate's Republican leaders scheduled a late-night vote to block a resolution calling for an end to hostilities with Iran. The Senate voted by 50 to 47, largely along party lines, to block a war powers resolution that had advanced on a procedural vote in May. This vote puts Iran on notice, Trump said on social media after Wednesday's late-night vote, although it does not affect the earlier vote. Wednesday's high-volume lunchtime exchange with a member of Trump's own party shows how the war is weighed on the president ahead of November elections. It will determine control of Congress. With Trump's approval rating at its lowest since he returned to office last year, just 1 in 4 Americans believes the war was worth its costs, a Reuters Ipsos poll showed. The exchange came a day after the Senate voted to direct Trump to end the war in a separate vote on a resolution passed by the House of Representatives this month. Cassidy was one of 4 Republicans to back it, along with opposition Democrats. Trump did not mention the exchange with Cassidy, who was unseated by a Trump-backed challenger in a primary election this year. Later, he criticized the Senate. Iran sees that, they go, "What's that all about? Now you know it's meaningless, right?" Trump told reporters at the White House. Several hours later, the administration asked Trump for $70 billion to cover the cost of the war, adding to the U.S. military budget of $867 billion. In Wednesday's late-night vote, Cassidy, who had voted for the recent Iran War Powers resolutions, voted no, while Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky, a Republican who also had voted in favor of War Powers resolutions, voted present. Two Republican senators, Susan Collins of Maine and Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, voted with every Democrat except one in favor of the resolution. Senator John Fetterman of Pennsylvania was the only Democratic no vote. Republican Senator Mitch McConnell of Kentucky and Michael Bennet of Colorado did not vote. In a Wednesday evening post on X, Cassidy thanked Vice President Vance and Special Envoy Steve Witkoff for a thorough briefing this afternoon on Iran. I appreciate the quick invitation to the White House to address many of my concerns, Cassidy said. Benchmark oil prices fell yesterday to their lowest since before the war started, as the initial accord between the United States and Iran lifted Iran's chokehold on the Strait of Hormuz, allowing traffic to flow again. Iran's Revolutionary Guards Corps warned vessels to stick to routes designated by Tehran through the Strait of Hormuz, rejecting newly announced shipping routes not coordinated with Iran as unacceptable and dangerous. The statement came a day after Oman announced temporary shipping lanes through the strait in coordination with the International Maritime Organization. In a statement, the IRGC urged vessels to coordinate with the Revolutionary Guards Navy via Maritime Channel 16 and threatened action against those infringing its requirements. Before the waterway was blockaded in the war, it had carried 1/5 of global oil and liquefied natural gas shipments. Conflicting accounts have emerged over elements of the framework deal, which had prompted criticism of Trump at home and abroad. Financial incentives for Iran, inspections of its nuclear facilities, control of the Strait, and Israel's parallel war in Lebanon have all been disputed. The deal sets up 60 days of talks to tackle thornier details, such as Iran's nuclear program. The proposed peace deal has provoked skepticism in the Middle East, where many states come under attack from Iran during the war and view the accord as too generous to Tehran, including a $300 billion fund and the waiver of some sanctions. Washington's Gulf allies fear the Reconstruction Fund could help Iran rebuild its military. The accord also does not address Tehran's ballistic missile capability. The deal requires Iran to let shipping flow freely through the Strait of Hormuz for 60 days, and Tehran has suggested it might impose tolls after that. Iran could propose environmental, navigation, and security fees in upcoming talks with Gulf states, said the diplomat briefed on its talks. Washington and its Gulf allies oppose such fees. We're not going to do anything that undermines the security of our allies, our long-standing allies in this region, Secretary of State Marco Rubio said in Kuwait City, where the U.S. Embassy resumed operations after a stoppage due to the war. In Washington, Lebanon and Israel discussed a U.S.-backed proposal for Israel's forces to pull out of some territory it invaded to be handed back to Lebanese army control. But Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Israel would not pull troops out. Israel has been battling Hezbollah in Lebanon since the militant group attacked Israel on March 2nd in support of Iran, and Tehran has made a cessation of hostilities there central to its demand in any peace deal with the United States. An Israeli drone strike on a car in southern Lebanon killed 2 people on Wednesday, Lebanese sources told Reuters, while Israel said it struck 2 armed Hezbollah fighters. It was not immediately clear if the incidents were the same. And we're going to turn to our closing. Time to close.
Yeah, I see that
It happens.
we're coming to the end of our time for reading today. And we're going to look at a couple of comics here. It's kind of hard to pick because there's some that are so funny. And this one's usually pretty visual, but I do like this one. It's called Break of Day. And you have a beach view. There's a beach towel with a large beach umbrella over it, and a small table with a drink with the little tiny umbrella in it. You know, we all know what those are. And the little tiny umbrella is looking up the big beach umbrella and saying, "Dad?"
I love it.
That's cute. What do you think?
It is cute. I
You mentioned
I
a couple
I
you
like
liked.
a few of them. Beetle Bailey has the bartender saying to the general, "I heard you had a wedding anniversary." 30 years, says the general. How did you do it? The general holds up his martini with 2 olives. I had some help.
Well, you've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for today, Friday, June 26th of 2026. We read the Buffalo News live on weekday and Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. and rebroadcast at 4 p.m. For more information, call us at 716-821-5555. And your readers today have been
Don Williams.
and J.J. Patek. Thank you for listening.
If you or people you know shop at any of the Dash's supermarkets, please save Dash's register tapes for radio reading. Our agency receives $2 for every $100 in Dash's register tapes. Radio reading has raised thousands of dollars so far. Anyone can drop off their Dash's tapes to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, between William and Clinton Streets. Or Dash's tapes can be mailed to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, New York, 14227. Any questions on Dash's tapes for radio reading? Call us at 716-821-5555, and thanks for caring. vision or have another print disability,